hopefully in a format that is familiar to members, and this is quite brief on this occasion. It came before Council in November, and we will have a Budget Council shortly on the 3rd of March. So this is a fairly brief update. Perhaps it would be useful to take members through the funding streams of the Council, which, if you turn to page 14, you'll see those split into the main, the Revenue Support Grant, Business Rate Retention and New Homes Bonus. If you look at the changes to our forecast over the years, you will see now that dramatically reducing Revenue Support Grant, and the focus very much turning onto more of the incentive type funding of the Business Rate Retention Scheme and New Homes Bonus. This year, Mr Mayor, is the first year of the Business Rate Retention Scheme, where the risk does fall more upon councils, with a ceiling and a safety net there though as well, but certainly to incentivise councils to grow the business rate yield. When this was first forecast, a baseline level was put into to our forecast moving forward, but it has been considered more prudent because of some changes and some changes to the forecast of where our business rates will be, that we should be budgeting at a safety net level. That means, the good news for that, members, is that there is only one way that amount can move, and that's upwards, but certainly was felt more prudent. So you will notice a change in that. Also, on the New Homes Bonus, which is outlined on page 15, this is a significant funding stream for this council now. And once we've reached it's a 6-year scheme whereby once you add a year and the older year drops off, so you continue rolling forward with the 6 years, certainly under the current scheme. And if you turn over to table 2 on page 16, you will see that by the year 2016-17, the amount that we will be receiving in New Homes Bonus is 17.9% overall of our total forecasted financing, which is significant, especially given the fact that over last summer, members will remember that there was consultation out to top slice the New Homes Bonus, either at a level of 35% or a level of 19% in order to fund LEPs, local enterprise partnerships. And following the consultation period, the government chose not to do that. But clearly there's a risk out there. If the New Homes Bonus amount that we are relying upon changes, it will have a significant impact on our forecast. If members want to have a look at the appendices, you will see that Appendix A on page 19 starts out with the forecast that was set at Council, with the amounts that we knew at that time. Forecast approved at Budget Council this year of 10.6 million. So members will be familiar with that table. And then turning over to Appendix B, there are the general assumptions used for the forecast. There was assumptions made for inflation, pay awards, employers' pension contributions. So those are all listed there for members' information. Since the last forecast, which came before Council in November, Appendix C sets out the few minor alterations to that forecast. And there members will see the cost to this council of the referendum, point 3, is £54,000, estimated at £54,000. That needs to be reflected in our forecast going forward. Appendix D does explain those alterations in full. And then that finally, members, takes us on to Appendix E, which is now our latest budget forecast, with the figures that are available to us, setting out our expectation that we will be in a surplus at the end of this year of just over £500,000. So thanks to all those budget holders, the finance team, everybody responsible for money throughout this council for taking tight control on that. It's a whistle-stop tour, Mr Mayor, but I know members are familiar with this. I'm very pleased that this information goes regularly to scrutiny and that members have the chance to chew over this information and to ask directly the Finance Director any questions. I simply ask that Council please note the implications of this updated forecast today. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Would you like to second that, Councillor Reeves?
And I'm delighted to second that, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Duffy?
It's just a quick question, really. I don't know whether it's fair to ask the portfolio holder now, but perhaps you could come back with the information at a later stage. Just like to point out that at the top of page 16, the second paragraph, it says that the new homes bonus is unring-fenced funding. So basically the council can use it for whatever we decide we want to use it for. And that is correct. But the government advice on the government's website, and I can show the reference later, says that local councils can decide how to spend the new home bonus. However, we expect local councils to consult communities about how they will spend the money, especially communities where housing stock has increased. So my question really is what consultation went on, because I wasn't a councillor when this first came in, or what consultation is expected with the increased levels of new homes bonus, and especially the greater importance that it's going to have for our overall budget. What consultation will be taking place to follow government guidance? Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak before I ask? Oh, Councillor Henshaw.
On table 2, can I just query why the estimated increase from 9% to 17.9, it actually decreases the percentage by 3.6, 2.8, 2.5 and 0 between 2013 and 2018. Can you explain why it decreases from 3.6 to 0?
Thank you. If nobody else wishes to speak, can I ask, does anybody else wish to speak? Can I ask the portfolio holder if she can answer those questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll do my best.
Or not.
I'll do my best. Firstly, it's a fair point raised by Councillor Duffy that the new homes bonus is unring-fenced. It's certainly recognised throughout councils across the country that this is a necessary source of funding for councils who have lost it from other pots and therefore gained it from new homes bonus. And my understanding is that in most instances it is used to mainstream the budget because it's simply necessary to do so. Having said that, certainly it would be right to say that some of this money, we could always look into the quantification of it, but certainly we do use this money in order to consult. We have the local plan out for consultation. We engage with parishes on neighbourhood plans. And that obviously has a cost to it. But in the main, I would say it's fair to say that we treat it as the vast majority of councils do up and down this country in order to ensure that we can continue to provide our council services right across the borough. Now, whether that changes in the future, it will depend on the stability or not of these funding streams, and I'm sure that the council, and we will be reminded to keep that under review. So that's the answer to the first question.
Thank you.
I struggle in a little to follow Councillor Henshaw's question, and maybe can talk to him outside of the meeting. But on table 2, if he's talking about the differential between the percentage rises in 13-14 to 14-15, and then the stabling off of that, if that's what he's talking about, that is simply because year on year as this scheme has embedded, we have been adding to the amount of our houses and therefore our new homes bonus. Once we have reached the 6 years, then it's simply the first year drops off and the new year is added on. So it's a rolling 6 years. Now, I'm not certain whether that's what Councillor Henshaw's asking, but I can clarify that with him outside of this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Right, can we move to the vote then on the recommendation? All those in favour of this report? Anybody against? Abstaining? No, thank you. Okay, can we move on to item 12, the Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2014-15, including grants to town and parish councils. Is anybody else going to leave? Quite a number of people declared an interest in this item. It's their choice. Okay, I'd like to invite Councillor Fabian Wilson to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 12 of your agenda papers this evening relates to the options available to this council in respect of the council tax reduction scheme for 2014-15 and includes grants to town and parish councils. As part of the 2012 Welfare Reform Act, the National Council Tax Benefit Scheme was abolished after 2012-13. with individual local authorities instead being required to introduce a local council tax reduction scheme with effect from 2013-14. Accordingly, the scheme currently in operation in Fylde was approved by this council in January last year and has been in operation during the current financial year. This report provides the background to the operation of the scheme and sets out the issues to be considered in adopting a scheme for 2014-15. The detail of the report before you tonight was considered by the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee at its meeting on the 9th of January this year, and the recommendations set out on page 25 of your agenda papers this evening are consistent with those made by the committee. Subsequently, the report was on the agenda for the Cabinet meeting of the 15th of January this year. As happened tonight, a number of members declared interest at that meeting, and as a consequence, the meeting was in quorum. The remaining members of Cabinet, although not decision-making, supported the recommendations of the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee and commended those recommendations as set out on tonight's agenda to the Council. The decision on which scheme to adopt lies with this Council as billing authority, but there are implications for other precepting authorities as set out in the report. Accordingly, and in line with legislation, we have consulted with Lancashire County Council, the police, and the fire authority, and the relevant sections of their responses are contained in Appendix A of the report. Each of the preceptors responded to the consultation, indicating preference for a scheme which aims to have a neutral financial effect on all preceptors. The recommendations set out in the report are in line with those responses. We have also consulted with the public, and the results are also included in the report. The first recommendation asks that Council approve option B as set out in section 3 of the report for the adoption of a council tax reduction scheme for 2014-15, which aims to have a neutral financial impact on the council and the major preceptors. For working age claimants, there would be a means-tested assessment to establish entitlement. A percentage reduction would be applied at the end of the assessment. Working age recipients would experience a resultant reduction in the level of support, which is currently estimated to be approximately 22.7% for 2014-15. Full details of the recommended scheme are available on the Council's website. The new scheme will apply only to working age claimants, with pensioners protected from reductions in support. The second recommendation relates to continuation of the Hardship Relief Fund to provide support for claimants in exceptional circumstances. The third and fourth recommendations relate to the passing on of support funding for town and parish councils to compensate them for losses in income as a consequence of the council tax reduction scheme. The split of this funding between the town and parish councils will change year on year depending upon the changes in caseload for council tax support within the population of each area. Appendix F on page 81 sets out the proposed CTRS grant payable to each town and parish council for 2014-15. The final two recommendations are hopefully self-explanatory for members. As I pointed out previously, each of the recommendations are in line with the resolutions of both the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet members and had broad support. Mr. Mayor, I would therefore like to propose the recommendations as set out on page 25 of your agenda papers, and I have a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Fylde.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I stand to second the motion.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak on this item? I'd like to say that I can't support this. I find the burden on working age people too great, so I will not be supporting it. Anybody else to speak? Okay, can we go to the vote? Those in favour of these recommendations?
That's clearly carried.
Clearly carried. Anybody against? I'm a lone voice. Yeah, I'll keep crying in the wilderness. Okay, agenda item 13, a review of council tax discounts and premium. Again, I'd like to invite Councillor Fabian Wilson to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 13 on your agenda papers this evening relates to the options available to this council in respect of the council tax discounts and premium for 2014-15. With effect from the 1st of April 2013, the government introduced legislation allowing local authorities the discretion to set discounts for both second homes and empty properties. One of the government's main intentions in localizing these decisions was to enable authorities to encourage empty homes to be brought back into use. An additional premium can also be charged to the owners of properties left empty for over 2 years. The Council considered the options available at its meeting in January 2013 and amended the discount applicable for long-term empty properties commencing the 1st of April 2013. As with the previous agenda item, the details of the report before you tonight was considered by the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee at its meeting on the 9th of January this year. And the recommendations set out on page 82 and 83 of your agenda papers this evening are consistent with those made by the committee. Subsequently, the report was considered by Cabinet at its meeting of the 15th of January this year, and Cabinet resolved to support the recommendations of the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee and commended those recommendations to the Council for approval tonight. Recommendations 1 and 2 propose no changes to the existing discounts for the following 2 categories of property: unfurnished vacant dwellings where major or structural repairs are required, underway, or recently completed, and vacant dwellings which are empty and substantially unfurnished. Recommendation 3 proposes that in respect of properties that have remained empty for more than 2 years, to introduce a premium and charge 150% of council tax. This is seen as an incentive for owners of long-term empty properties to bring them back into use. A number of other Lancashire districts already charge such a premium as detailed in Appendix B of the report, and all have experienced reductions in the number of long-term empties on their books. There are a number of statutory exemptions which would apply in specific circumstances as set out in Appendix C of the report, which would exempt property owners from such a charge. Recommendation 4 proposes that in respect to second homes, the current 10% discount should no longer apply, and that such properties should receive a full 100% charge. The final recommendation is designed to ensure that owners of empty properties are made aware of the proposed changes, in particular the premium. So, to confirm the position, each of the recommendations are in line with the resolutions of both the Policy Development Scrutiny Committee and of Cabinet and have broad support. Mr. Mayor, I would therefore like to propose the recommendation as set out in the agenda papers, and I do have a seconder.
Thank you. Councillor Fazakerley.
I'm happy to second the recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak on this item? Councillor Clayton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, if I could just ask the Speaker about the reference to paragraph or Appendix C. It was noted that Appendix C would be included as far as the exceptions are concerned. It was mentioned verbally, but I don't see any reference to it within the recommendations 1 to 5. I may have missed some point here, but I just want clarification that the exceptions detailed at page 91, detailed as Appendix C, are contained in some form or another in the points 1 to 5 of the recommendations. If that is the case, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to accept this. So perhaps that could be answered, possibly.
Could you clarify that, Councillor Wilson? Or somebody? I told you I would.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The exemptions that are set out in Appendix C are statutory exemptions, so the council doesn't have any choice. Those exemptions would apply.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Donoghue. Thank you. Okay, any other speakers? Can we move to the vote then? All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you. Anyone against? No, thank you. Thank you. Could somebody invite the other councillors back in? Thank you. Well, yeah. Welcome back. Can we move on to agenda item 14? Planning appeal costs unfunded budget increase request. I'd like to invite Councillor Trevor Fylde to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the report is self-explanatory. I think the reason for the report is clear and simply that I removed the recommendations on page 97 and I seek Council's endorsement to agree on the unfunded budget increase for 2014 for the sum of £116,118. So the simple reason, I seek Council's endorsement, and in addition to that, there is some historical information regarding recent appeals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fylde. Do you have a seconder for this? Councillor Buckley, thank you.
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I do have concerns about this report. And on page 94, item 6, I'm rather dismayed that various sites have been listed within that paragraph. I would hate to feel that any future DC committee feels constrained because of this report in relation to giving approval or refusal to any of these applications. And I would hate any message to go out to any developer thinking that we're inviting them to actually go to appeal should we refuse their applications. For that reason, I would like to add a little 3 onto the recommendations, and I would like it to say that developers should note that the unfunded budget increase means that Fylde Borough Council will go forward with appeals should they need to. We are prepared to make what we believe are the correct decisions. And I do have a seconder for that.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Who is seconding that? Councillor Duffy, thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to second that, and just to expand on it slightly. It is wrong that these are specifically mentioned in this report, and developers do have to be clear that when we debate and come to a decision about an application in Development Management Committee, we will do what we believe is right, and they need to understand that just because their sites are mentioned in this report, they should not take that as us saying we expect any decision we made on that to go to appeal, because we can't do that at this stage. We don't have the details, and we will at the Development Management Committee make a decision based on the facts on the day, and if we decide that they're to be refused, then so be it. But they shouldn't take the fact that their sites are mentioned in this report as any kind of encouragement that we think, oh well, we know that if we refuse the applications, then they will appeal them. It's two completely separate things. We will make a decision on the day.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. So, would anybody like to speak to that amendment? Councillor Easton? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think developers are probably better aware of where costs are allocated against councils than we are as council members. So I don't think we're either taking anything from them or giving them anything away by putting this here. What I wouldn't like to see, though, are further dressings up of this. Clearly, I believe that the Development Control Committee should be there to take the right decisions. It also ought to listen very closely to the professional advice it gets from its officers. And some cases are very finely balanced, and others are quite clear. And I don't think we should start now trying to meddle with what is said here in this recommendation, because I don't think that message is meaningful in any way to the developers, who are fully aware of their rights and where, in fact, the inspectors have gone in their favour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Councillor Fydler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I cannot agree with the amendment because I think it's an amendment which states the obvious. And the DM committee, as always, and I hope always will, determine applications according to their interpretation of the planning policies at that time. To repeat myself, there is no need for that an amendment, and I do believe the authors of the amendment are being extremely sensitive. I look at item 6, my immediate reaction was simply it's flagging up potential areas of concern, not to members of the DEM committee because they appreciate the issues involved, but simply flagging up to members of this council who are not part of the DEM committee of potential risk in the future. I see it as simple as that. I do believe the authors are being extremely sensitive and there's no need for the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Rose, is it clarification?
I agree totally that it should be no need for this further clause on the recommendations, and there wouldn't be had the sites not been included. I think it's quite wrong that those sites are down there, and I asked actually prior to this meeting for them to be removed, but I was advised by the Chief Exec that it wouldn't be possible to do so for the meeting tonight. That's the only reason that I'm putting forward this amendment, because the sites have been mentioned. I think it's quite wrong, and I think it would have been possible to write this report referring to large appeals without actually listing those particular sites. So that's what I object to, and I do feel that there are developers who will take heart at that, just as there have been developers who have taken heart at the Schlar document and come forward to put planning applications in on land that isn't even in the local plan. So that is why I feel that this amendment is necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. I would like to say that I had concern at point 6, and I rang the author of this report because I was dismayed that certain ones were in and certain ones were not in. Had this totally listed, but there's no way that we could know the applications that would come in 14-15, so there is no way that list could be... Sorry, Alan, you flashing lights at me. Could be totally inclusive. So that's what concerned me, and the author of the report agreed with me after I'd spoken to him that it probably would have been better had it just said major sites and not named any sites. I worry that these sites have been flagged up now as sites to anybody who cares to read the minutes of this or to read this report. Does anybody else wish to speak? No, so we're going to vote on the amendment.
The amendment was to add to the recommendations that developers should note that the unfunded budget increase means that Fylde Borough Council will go forward with appeals should they need to. We are prepared to make what we believe are the correct decisions.
Thank you. All those in favour of that amendment? Pounders up, yes. Councillor Pounders up if you got him.
Were you indicating in favour, Councillor Pounders?
Yeah.
Or 21?
Thank you. Those against? So the amendment is carried. So that now becomes a substantive motion. So can we take a vote on that? All those in favour of that substantive motion? Thank you. Carried.
That's carried. Just for clarification, you've now got 3 recommendations. You've got the original ones plus that added. So the original recommendations are still carried.
Yeah. Are there any against? No. Thank you. Agenda item 15, review of polling districts and polling places. Councillor Buckley, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, certainly. Very briefly, Mr Mayor. I ask Council to note the recommendations to authorise returning officer recommendations on this review. This is a review of polling districts and polling places which were needed to be carried out within a 16-month period from the 1st of October 2013, which has duly been done. I do hope members have seen the proposals and had the opportunity for input into those proposals. The recommendation number 2 I would like to amend ever so slightly, Mr Mayor, because I note on paragraph 5 on page 99 that it says in the final sentence, in these circumstances, it is recommended the returning officer be authorised, following consultation with ward members, to make any changes necessary, therefore to use alternative locations prior to the next statutory review. The words following consultation with ward members have been omitted from the recommendation number 2, and I think it's important that we have that in. So that would read, Mr Mayor, to authorise the returning officer to make amendments to polling places where required and following consultation with ward members prior to the next statutory review. I'd so move the recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Trelfall, would you like to second?
Happy to second this item, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to vote? No. Or does anybody wish to speak on this item? No? Thank you. Can we move straight to the vote then? All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you very much. Anybody against? Thank you. Nearly there. Agenda item 16, the pay policy statement 1415. Again, I'd like to invite Councillor Karen Buckley to introduce this item.
Mr Mayor, I'd simply like to defer this item, please, to give it the opportunity to go before scrutiny. Some members have come to me with questions. I think it would certainly benefit from members having an input if they have questions or queries. Not that there's anything at all untoward. This policy comes before Council on a yearly basis, but given the fact that there's been some questions on it, I do ask that it's deferred to give scrutiny the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Pounder, thank you. Does anybody wish to speak to that? No? So the recommendation is that this item is deferred. Could we please have a show of hands? Clearly carried. Anybody against? Thank you. Thank you very much for your input and attendance. Thank you.